Guys, how's it going? So I'm going to be doing a review on the Gigabyte Aorus 18. I had no intentions of reviewing this laptop, kind of wasn't even on my radar, but it just got to a point where I was just getting worried. I didn't know what was going to happen with the tariffs and inventory levels. And I have a whole bunch of pre-orders out there, and not much of them have really shipped by now. They're starting to roll in, but I saw this available in stock at Best Buy, and I kind of figured this might be my only opportunity to review or even own a 5090 laptop. So here it is, and I'm glad I got it because even though this wasn't on my radar, I'm actually really happy with it. I mean, this is a gigantic, thick and heavy 18-inch laptop. It's not for everyone, but we'll get into all of those details. But first, let's always start off with the build and design, and I'll make this quick. The lid is metal, but it doesn't feel as high quality as some of the other guys out there. There is some flex to it, and it doesn't have that cold metal feel that I'm used to. Not a big deal though, I just thought I mentioned that. And you're getting some RGB on this Gigabyte Aorus logo, some kind of bird. Cool little Easter eggs on the top right. I really like it. And the metal is only in the top here, and it does create some grooves here. Like for example, I've got some dog hair stuck in the middle of this groove here, and I'm unable to get it out. Maybe I'll get some tweezers and such. Yeah, the build quality is in a way okay, not terrible, but not great either. I do feel that overall it's better than the ROG G18 that I had, and I'll get into that a little bit more. But right now, since the laptop is still closed, so you are getting a series of ports on the left. That's kind of what the new thing is these days. And on the back, you're getting nothing but ventilation, no ports or anything like that. Big radiators at the back here. It does a really good job with cooling. It gets pretty loud, not gonna lie. Not as loud as gaming laptops used to be back in the day. I mean, compared to some of the other laptops that I've heard so far this year, I mean, I would say that this is one of the louder ones out there, but nothing that I'm already not used to. And one thing I do like is the port on the left is connected to the dedicated GPU. So yes, you can get G-Sync on your monitors. If that's important to you, that is important to me. I almost will not consider a laptop as my main device if it doesn't have that. So thank you, Gigabyte. So now let's open up the lid, and you are greeted to a really nice keyboard deck. I like the branding with the Aorus that is both on the keyboard deck and on the glass trackpad. Yes, it is glass, and it glides incredibly well. Good feeling trackpad. Click doesn't feel as premium as something like the G18 I've checked out recently, but overall, it's in line with other thicker and heavier type of gaming laptops. Happy about the trackpad. The keyboard deck is made out of plastic, and I feel like the quality of this plastic feels better than the G18. I did get a Scar 18 in, and I will be doing a video on that one next if you want to get subscribed. And also, I'm almost at 10,000 subs. If you guys want to help out the channel, that'll be amazing. But anyway, yeah, I was talking about the keyboard deck. I believe it is plastic. I'm unable to see what it is online, but it feels like a really high quality, thick polycarbonate type of plastic. It's one of those things. What I would say, it's either a cheap feeling metal or a very high quality feeling plastic, if that makes any sense at all. Again, just leave me some comments. Anyway, keyboard, things get really good here. I love this keyboard. It's fantastic to type on. It's got a good amount of travel. It doesn't feel cheap and membraney. It's got a nice, satisfying press. The bounce back up is nice. The travel distance is more than adequate. I will say though, and I remember reviewing a Gigabyte laptop a long time ago when I just started the channel, and I felt like the keycaps were a bit too small. And I do feel that way here, but I got used to it. Gaming on this has been fantastic, though. I haven't had any issues, and once I got used to the keyboard, there were zero missed presses. You get a full number pad, which I do like to see. Plus, minus, and enter is offset to the right where it should be, so that's great. On the top, these are where I'm assuming these are the speakers, and it is handled by Dolby Atmos. Speakers are great. No, 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 no. Boy, you better slow it down. Watch it on me, drop it like a bass drum. Give me all you got me now. It actually just sounds very neutral and present, and things sound as authentic as they can be on laptop speakers. So while like the fidelity might not be as good as something like I checked out on the G18 or the ROG G16 or the MacBooks, etc., in some ways, I prefer the speaker just because of how neutral and how pleasant it sounds, even though it doesn't get as loud. And all the processing is handled by Dolby, and I've said this many times, Dolby is by far the best at processing sounds of these laptops. So kudos there. Even the back, which I didn't really talk about yet. Yes, this is also made out of plastic, the same type of high quality plastic or low quality metal, whichever one it is, but it's great. And I like the design of the back too. There is no flex here. There's no flex on the keyboard deck either. And one thing I like about this laptop, when it gets hot under load, well, I should say the lack of it getting hot is this entire laptop does not really get too warm to the touch. It stays relatively cool, which is nice to have. I can't believe I never checked out a Gigabyte laptop. So far, everything I'm really liking about this device. It's one of those things, like kind of what I mentioned earlier. If you're having a hard time finding laptops, which it seems like inventory is scarce, we don't know what's happening with the tariffs, and especially with the 5090s, they're hard to come by. If you only see the Gigabyte in stock, you're going to be happy with it. And even talking about the gaming, which I'm going to get into right now. So when I ran that Cyberpunk test that I typically do, when I'm just looking at Afterburner to see how much watts is actually pulling, because that's a game that stresses both the CPU and the GPU at the same time, I was getting around 240 watts. They advertised 270 watts. I was not able to see that in anything that I tested, but overall, performance is in line with what I would expect from this type of device. Maybe I would have expected a little bit more because this is a thick and heavy laptop. I mean, it's like over 7 pounds. One thing I also do want to talk about is the overall system latency of this Gigabyte is incredibly good. Just even using a mouse or the trackpad to just navigate through windows is incredibly fast and snappy. When I played a round of Overwatch, it was probably one of the best rounds I've had. I've done among the best that I've ever done in that game because of how snappy this entire experience is. Probably one of the faster feeling laptops that I've ever used. Okay, so next I want to talk about the display, and this is using a mini LED panel, and I want to say it's the same mini LED panel that the Scar uses, that the Scar at least from last year uses. And it's a great panel. It's one of my favorites. There's not much flicker compared to OLED screens. It's really not that bad. I gotta set my camera to a really high shutter speed to even show any type of flicker. And then at that point, it's very minimal. So I've been gaming with this for hours and hours. I use this for my 9 to 5 day job, and I haven't had any issues. And I am pretty sensitive to flicker. Not so much with OLEDs, but there are so many LED screens that really bug. I think PWM flicker affects everybody differently. Anyway, the colors are great. Unfortunately, I forgot to run my measurements before doing this video, but I'm just going to show them up on screen like I typically do. If I had to guess, I'm pretty sure we're at 100% sRGB, 100% DCI-P3, maybe 99. I'm going to wager high up on the Adobe RGB. When I run the measurements, I'm going to be surprised myself. Contrast ratio is good because this is a mini LED display. It does have over 2,000 local dimming zones, which is similar to what the Scar 18 and the Scar 16 has. And based off of what I remember from the Scar 18 and the Razer Blade 18, which both use the same panel, I'm almost convinced that this is the same panel or it is equivalent. Only thing I will say though is HDR is a little bit wonky. Everything is fixable though, but on their website they said that they are Display VESA certified, but that is not what I'm seeing. So if you go to the advanced display settings, usually you would be able to see if there was any kind of HDR certification, and I am not seeing that here, which is a bummer because what I do like about the certification is you don't have to mess with any of the settings. You do have to go configure some settings. Yes, I do keep my brightness all the way up. I'm an advanced optimist now, so the only way to increase brightness is by doing it through the keyboard, which I'm okay with. So you just go, so when you click on the HDR settings, I had to move around the slider so it doesn't end up clipping my whites. So this is where I left it at. And then what I ended up doing was just changing it to automatically manage the color for apps. Once I did that, I was greeted to one of the best HDR experiences I have had, in line with what the Scar 18 from last year can do. The colors in HDR though still aren't super accurate. That's why I like to see the certification, because they are a little bit oversaturated, but I'm a purist for display colors and making sure everything is accurate though. Most people aren't though. So you might actually like the slightly oversaturated nature of the HDR presentation of this laptop. You do see some blooming when you have something lighter over a dark gray background. I do see it sometimes, not so much when I'm gaming though. It's not that distracting. I don't think that the local dimming backlight is as good as what ROG is able to do. I think they spent a little bit extra time tuning their displays for that, and there's no way to turn off the local dimming if that's something that bugs you. But overall, I was really happy with it. And if I was considering this over the G18, which doesn't have any type of local dimming, not the SCAR, but actually the Strix G18, I would choose this any day. Alright, so on to performance, and I had to redo my entire charts for this because I ran it when I just got this laptop, but then just like a few days ago, I got a BIOS update, and things did improve. So when I reran Steel Nomad, I did notice a 5% increase after the BIOS update. So I was like, oh man, I gotta redo all my testing. And I did. This is based off of the newest BIOS that's available as of April 29th, 2025. And I also did get the new Legion 7 in. That's the 10th generation with a 5090, and it does perform a little bit better than this. That does push a lot more power to both the GPU and the CPU, what I'm noticing. But anyway, we're talking about the Gigabyte for now. So overall, it is among the best scores that I've ever gotten in this test, and it is being beat by the new Legion. So now let's look at Time Spy, and overall, what you can expect from the 5090, at least the one that I have here in this Aorus 18 versus all the 5080s, or the best 5080 that I've tested, you can expect anywhere between a 10 to 13, maybe a 15% increase. So that means I can just blast through a lot of these tests. So I'm going to show the 3D Mark CPU profile. I really like doing this test because it just shows how this new Intel Core Ultra 9 275HX chip handles itself, and it does good, among the best out there. If you look at like Avatar Frontier, you can see that you are getting a decent bump up when you look at 4K, a decent bump up again when you look at QHD, and also at 1080p. But just coming back to 4K really quickly, if you're comparing it to the G18 with the 5080, which is the most recent laptop I had in, I was getting 40 FPS. But then you're getting 47 FPS on the 5090s, and that might seem like a decent jump. But I found that at least my Strix G18 wasn't performing as well as it should. When I had the HP Open Max, that performed better. I got 44 FPS, and so now 44 FPS versus 47 FPS in a game like Avatar Frontiers in Ultra at 4K, you're getting somewhat of an update, but it's not a crazy amount. I have noticed that this is more fun to play than a 5080 because of those 1% lows and the frame time. And also, like I said, the latency on this laptop is incredibly fast. Going over to Black Myth Wukong really quickly, I don't have much games with that because I just started testing it. And so that's one thing I'm noticing. If you do plan on using frame generation, you are going to get a bigger boost with the 5090, and I am liking frame gen less and less every time I use it. I really don't like the amount of latency that it adds. Even though you're at a good starting point with this Gigabyte, I don't like adding it. I'd rather play at 40 FPS without frame gen than 70 FPS with frame gen. And I don't use more than frame gen 2x because I find the other ones to be completely unusable. It's kind of nauseating how bad the latency becomes when you use those higher amount of generated frames. And I've said this again and again, I don't think that the generated frames look as sharp or as high quality as the natural frames. It is at least usable at 2x. Bit of a rant, but if you were going to look at the 5080, the way I set this game, with the settings that I use, which is pretty much everything maxed out, you're getting 34 or 35 FPS if you use a 5080. I did notice the difference between 34 and 39 FPS. It did feel smoother. Is it worth an extra $1,000 to go from a 5080 to 5090? I'm not going to be able to answer that. That's up to you. For most people, I will say no. We can focus on Horizon Zero Dawn a little bit because that is full rasterization. It is not using any type of DLSS or any type of upscaling or anything like that. It's just good old-fashioned gaming, which, you know, is still important to a lot of people. And the performance actually goes down to a 5% improvement when you're not using any of NVIDIA's new tricks. But I will say though, and I've said this in many of my other videos, that there are some things that my charts are not picking up. Things do feel better and smoother playing on this 5090 versus a 4090 from last year. I won't say it's a monumental difference. I was still able to get immersed and I still love playing games on the 40 series of laptops. So don't get too much FOMO over it. I won't say it's worth like going crazy to upgrade this year unless you need to. So I don't know. I'm kind of done with these charts. If inventory is scarce and you're really looking for a laptop, I don't think you would go wrong with this one. So with that being said, if you guys have any questions, leave me a comment and I'll see you guys in the next one. I still have a few more gaming laptops that I want to cover, and then eventually maybe I want to move on to some other tech. Anyway, thanks a lot guys, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you, bye.